some things yesterday. Okay. I'll continue from there on. Okay. So see, now let's start with Palo Alto's firewall architecture, like how they have built the firewall. Okay. Just a second, I'm getting a call. Okay. Sorry. So let's start with Palo Alto firewall architecture. Now, what they have done in the Palo Alto firewall architecture is they call that we have a SP3 architecture. Okay. Now, what they mean by SP3 architecture is fancy name for single pass parallel processing. Okay. I bet they didn't name it S triple P, probably because they thought maybe if we name it this, maybe people will confuse it with triple P protocol. So our SP3 sounds actually more marketable. Okay. So what do they mean by single pass parallel processing? Okay. Now to understand that, if you look at this, okay, whenever a packet comes, okay, like I told you yesterday, the problem with UTM is, or the problem with having multiple components separate from firewall is, yesterday we just discussed, I'll remind you quickly, this thing that, you know, we can have multiple of these separate components which do individual things, like one of them is doing URL filtering, another is doing antivirus checking, proxy, IPS. The more these components are, the packet will have to go through each of them, and this creates more delay, right? And even if they are in the same box, like Checkpoint has done, and they call it UTM, the more you number of blades you increase, delay will be increased for the packet to get out. And this you can easily figure out from, like, if you see what people do, one of the most common things you will find, service providers asking, if you complain that you are experiencing delay on your lease line, one of the most common solutions they'll firstly recommend is that, you know, take your firewall out and check the speed directly, check the delay directly. If there is still delay, we'll then sort out anything. Okay. And the reason for that is the firewalls have been kind of notoriously popular in this adding of delay. Okay. So Palo Alto, what they have tried to do is, if you look at this, this is actually far more clear in a 3D diagram. If you look at a 2D diagram, this might not be that clear. So what happens is, like, when a packet comes, while it is being checked by the policy engine, that is the security policy engine. Uh, if you are coming from the Cisco background, you can think of it as the ACL, but here everything gets attached in the same security policy. Okay, all these individual components. While it is being checked by the policy engine, while the packet is being checked by the policy engine, it is being checked by app ID. Okay, and parallelly user ID. User ID is like we make rules based on, you know, user logged in rather than IP address or subnet. Okay, so we can probably allow maybe accounts people who belong to the user group of accounts, uh, have access of something, but not uh, other people. And similarly, if you look at this, like we could make even integrate these two together, and maybe like I'll give you an example. Like suppose I want to give access of Facebook, Twitter, okay, and all these social media platforms, but only to people or the team who is sitting and doing social media marketing for the company. Okay, like they need to post tweets and reply to customers on the social media channels. Then what you can do is you can tie them together and maybe integrate, like okay, all the users having their users of a social media marketing group, they are allowed to access Facebook, Twitter, and all these things. Also, while the packet is being checked by the policy engine, app ID, user ID, it is being checked by content ID. Content ID will be the part which will check it for antivirus, spywares, file blocking if you want only certain file types to be allowed to download, all these things. And while that is being done, the packet is being checked for networking, like the routing table lookup is being done. Okay, and the packet is being checked for whether NAT will be required for it or not. Okay, so once all that is done, your packet does not individually go into all of these components. So that's why I say this is single pass parallel processing. Like while the packet is being processed by policy engine, it is being processed by these other components. So the benefit is like, instead of this, if the architecture would have been like, okay, policy security policy engine, then app ID, then user ID. If it would have been like this, the problem is the delay would have been more, like because it would have to go from one component to another component before it goes all the way through. So this saves time, and this reduces the delay. This doesn't add a lot of delay compared to other firewall. This is what Palo Alto says. Okay, like if you read it from here, single pass operations per packet, like traffic classification with app ID, user group mapping, content scanning. Uh, all this happens simultaneously, parallelly. Okay, and the way you create a security policy here is also a little bit different. Like what happens here is like I don't have my firewall powered on. I'll just try to Google search an image to show you for now. Just to give you a better idea. Okay. Like see, okay, this is a security policy rule. Okay, we'll create them later. Okay, I'm not trying to get into that right now, but what you notice here is, see, all these things that I'm talking about. Okay, like okay, all these things like app ID. Okay, uh, user. Okay, uh, even actually the content id comes under the action tab. There's different profiles that you can apply, attach, like antivirus, url filtering, file blocking, and everything. Now my point here is like you create one security policy and you can tie everything down to it. You can tie user id to it, you can tie application app id to it, you can tie all these content id things to it. So what you do is you have one single policy which ties down everything together. Okay. Now they say function specific parallel hardware engines are there. Okay, so they say that for each of them, in easy terms, just think of it as like they're saying that for each of these there is CPU, RAM and dedicated hardware engines having resources for them, so that uh, the overall delay is not that much in processing. Okay. Also, if you see here, if you notice down here, there is separate control plane and data plane, which is not much new. This has been the norm for all the security devices for quite long now. If you don't know what data plane and control plane is, we'll discuss that. Okay, don't worry. So see, sometimes if when you try to find out or read some documentation of Palo Alto for this firewall architecture, you might get a diagram like now. Don't start thinking that this means that packet will come and it will be checked for user ID, then app ID, then content ID, then policy engine, and then it will be filtered. Because in a 2D diagram, you can never, imagine them getting simultaneously processed. When the packet comes, it is being checked for all of these things parallelly, like, not one by one. So read this. Like Palo Alto Next Generation Firewall is empowered with single pass software which processes the packet to perform functions like networking. Okay, for networking, all the things like NAT, okay, routing table lookup, user ID, policy lookup, traffic classification with app ID, and also decoding these threads and contents of the packet. This is all performed once per packet. Okay. Now, often at times people uh, ask this thing. Okay, what's the difference in a UTM and this architecture? Okay. And again, see, this is what Palo Alto says. So, what Palo Alto tells about UTM is that when a packet comes, it will be checked for firewall policy. Okay. While it is being checked, it will not be parallelly. It's one by one getting and going through all of them before being sent. Now, if you notice here in a UTM, all these individual components, whether it's firewall policy or URL filtering policy, all of them are kind of checking this header information of L2, L3. Okay. Um, all of them are checking the protocol number, the field at layer 3. Okay. Or port numbers at layer 4. Okay. So this is what they have tried to, kind of do once and not do for each and every individual component separately. Okay. So this is what architecture of a typical UTM is like, unified threat management. Okay. So if you deploy this, there will be more delay. Okay, it increases delay. Fine. So it's been observed that UTM, which processes the traffic using multi-pass architecture, results in process overhead, CPU increases, utilization, latency introduction, and throughput degradation. Okay. Now, uh, don't get into any kind of debate like who is better. It's all uh, dependent on personal preferences of people. Okay, so next let's talk about this control plane and data plane. Okay, and in order to understand this, I give people this common example. Like all of you have seen trains running on these tracks. So this train tracks. This is kind of the data plane. Means the packets will come and go on the data plane. Okay, and through the control plane, basically you can manage where the how the data plane behaves. Okay. So see, the control plane is that part of network device that will carry configuration management traffic and is responsible for routing. Okay, so like you can simply think of it as like if I'm running two routers, okay, or three routers, all the OSPF messages or any routing protocol that I'm running back and forth between these firewall and routers, that's part of control plane. Okay. Now here uh, they have also included the management traffic, but some at some devices you will not find that part of control plane. They'll say, we'll have three planes: control plane, management plane, data plane. Okay. And management plane will include all the things related to, like, suppose as an admin trying to SSH to this device, okay, to make configuration changes, that they consider part of management plane. But here you can say these two things they have combined and said, this is control plane. So the data plane, sometimes known as the user plane or carrier plane, is part of network that carries user traffic. Okay. So now, what good thing that they have done here is that in Palo Alto they have dedicated CPU and RAM for control plane and data plane. Okay. See, one of the most common pain points, if you have worked in a production environment, you might have noticed that when you try to do your labs of routers and stuff in your lab environment or a GNS or something like that environment, the response is very fast of the device, right? Like when you open the session, you try to configure something, it moves very fast. Compared to that, when you try to do the same thing on a production network, the response is very slow. The reason for that is simple. In the production environment, your device is processing a lot of traffic, so it has already a high CPU utilization for because of uh, the packet being processed. So if the CPU utilization is 70%, automatically, even if you try to manage the device, it has lesser CPU to allocate to these things. Now, so your response to CLI sometimes is very slow. Okay. Now, what they have done in Palo Alto here is, if you check this architecture, there is dedicated CPU and RAM for the security processing, and there is dedicated CPU and RAM for these device management and control planes. Okay. So what happens is like, okay, just wait. Let me boot up a firewall for showing you some basic things. Let it boot. It's going to take some time. I'll show you some basic things here. Like, point is like, since there is dedicated CPU for security processing as well as management, even if your device is processing a lot of traffic, it's this CPU utilization and this RAM utilization which is getting high. Okay. So even if you try to log in to device to maybe change configuration, the response of device is not that bad even if it is processing a large amount of traffic in the data plane. Okay. So that's one pain point solved. And in fact, if you look at even the Palo Alto GUI, you will find that they'll show you two CPU utilization there. One will be for the management plane or the control plane here. Okay. Another will be for the data plane. Okay. So if you have too much traffic being processed, the data plane traffic, the data plane CPU utilization is going to increase, but the management plane CPU utilization won't. Okay. Like I was telling you, control plane provides dedicated configuration, logging, and reporting functions on a separate processor, RAM, and SSD. Okay. SSD they have kept here for holding the operating system as well as the logs. Okay. Like in routers, we have flash. They don't have any flash related stuff here. Uh, they have SSD. Okay. Then comes signature matching. All these things like signature matching, which will match signatures for viruses, spyware, credit card number information if it is being sent, or any exploits. It has dedicated RAM. Security processing has separate RAM and CPU. And this is just a general architecture on a individual model. If you go for a high-end model, it's even way much stronger in terms of the hardware components there. Okay. So network processing part will be responsible for all these things: route lookup, ARP, MAC table lookup, QoS, or MAC. Now, the next thing that I'm showing you, this part here, it's not required for the certification exam. It's just I want you to have a better idea like how good a hardware they are trying to build of Palo Alto. Okay, and this is 4000 series firewalls hardware architecture. And what you see here is that we'll look at the different models. I'll show you where you can look up information about specific models. But if you see here, there is two dedicated CPU cores for control plane. Okay, hard drive or now this is an old firewall. Frankly speaking, this is now end of life from Palo Alto. Okay, they have replaced it, and already if you see, there are 16 dedicated CPUs for security processing. So there's a whole lot of CPUs, and basically, if you look at this, it's kind of like having a dedicated server processing all of these things. Okay, you see lot of RAM, dedicated RAM for signature matching, lot of CPU and dedicated RAM for security processing. And in fact, like I was telling you, 4000 series has been replaced by 5000. If you see between the 4000 and 5000, like people who used to buy 4000 now buy 5000 series firewall. What's the difference that you notice? The biggest difference is there's now more CPU everywhere, more RAM everywhere. Because of this, since they have so much RAM and so much CPU, the delay is not that much. Okay. Also, they have replaced hard drives with SSD to give better performance for logs and operating system boot up and stuff. Okay. Again, these things are not required. Okay. So architecturally, if you make a conclusion, all these things like app ID, user ID, content ID, since they process everything simultaneously, uh, and Palo Alto says that even if we have to add more features down the lane, we'll add those features and increase the more CPUs and RAM for them. Okay, so basically they are adding more and more features with policy with dedicated engines hardware engines, okay, rather than having these discrete separate devices or blades like stuff. Don't worry too much about how to access the firewall right now. I'll discuss that. For now, I just want to show you like sometimes, just to clarify things. Okay. See, this is what I was telling you. Once you log into the Palo Alto, you see here management CPU, data plane CPU, they are shown separately. And in fact, the architecture is the reason if you try to make a lab environment for Palo Alto, the minimum that you have to give is 2 cores for CPU. Why? Because it will dedicate 1 core for this control plane and 1 core for the data plane. So even if you want to give the minimum configuration for firewall, maybe just for lab environment purposes, it's going to cost you 2 cores of your CPU. And sometimes people are having, i3 or something with just 2 cores, then, it becomes difficult for them to set up the lab environment. I'm not saying all i3 have 2 cores. Okay. Intel has a very, weird kind of method to name everything. Okay. Now, uh, this I've included just because there are sometimes questions in the certification exam asking you about the data flows. Okay. I'll tell you what the question types is, but before that, let's just understand this. Okay. Now see, uh, suppose we have a branch office here and we have a headquarter. Now all the traffic going from the branch office to the headquarter, okay, will be going through a VPN, right? Through VPN tunnels. This is what they regard as east-west traffic. Okay. And all the traffic going from the mobile endpoints of people working from home or remotely is again regarded as east-west data flow. Okay. Any traffic going from like internet to headquarter site, okay, or headquarter site to our data center, this we regard as north-south traffic. Okay. Even traffic, if you are having virtual machines and you are saying like traffic going between these two virtual machines, suppose, okay, traffic going between these two virtual machines, that will regard as east-west traffic. Okay. Now there are different devices, or not different devices, but there are different components which protect different things. Like if you see this, there is branch office firewalls which can establish VPN connections with the headquarter firewall. You can have global protect VPN clients on these mobile endpoints. Okay, and also you can have firewall, which is basically uh, allowing or restricting between your VMs. Okay, so what kind of question you can get asked is that they sometimes ask you like, okay, if you talk about global protect, okay, what kind of data flow does this get involved into? Is it east-west traffic or is it north-south? So it is east-west because it's like this, okay. And similarly, if we talk about a virtual machine firewall, how does it get involved in? It's again east-west traffic, right? And if you talk about like traffic going from internet to your headquarter site or traffic going from your headquarter site to your data center, that will be regarded as north-south traffic. Okay. This terminology has been started getting used everywhere now. Okay, even Cisco is coming up with it in their courses. Okay. So, like I was telling you even yesterday, Palo Alto has a more integrated approach to security, as in, they have not made these individual components. If you see, uh, they have made these individual components, but all of them are tied together to one device. Okay. So whether you talk about App ID, which identifies individual protocols and individual applications being used. Okay. Whether you talk about URL filtering for what kind of websites people have accessible. Whether you talk about vulnerability protection, because uh, every software can have a vulnerability which some attacker can potentially use to get things done which software sometimes is not supposed to do. Okay, so exploiting the vulnerability, again, the vulnerability protection profiles are there inside of this firewall. So you can have anti-spyware, antivirus. What's the difference between a spyware and virus? A spyware is basically used for spying, like key logging, uh, webcam hijacking, uh, maybe taking screenshots, stuff like that. Okay, antivirus will basically protect you against virus getting delivered to your end device. Okay, and if you remember, yesterday I discussed a little bit that they have now started developing traps. Okay, for quite a while now. Like I think they have now come up with the version 5 or something. Uh, this is the endpoint security solution. So just think of it like you have a vast AVG, these kind of antivirus uh, clients on your end devices. Similar to that, there is Traps, which is uh, used in endpoint protection. Okay. Also, you can have file blocking, like which file types are allowed. Maybe like I don't want to allow exe files to be downloaded. Okay. And for DOS protection, also, if you need some form of DOS protection, denial of service attack protection, you can have that. Wildfire is their community approach to providing a security in which we submit uh, malicious files to the cloud. Okay, and the sandboxing environment from Palo Alto. Okay, so all of this is tied down to one single bot. Okay, and frankly speaking, I've discussed it with many different security engineers. Uh, why they like sometimes it more compared to other vendors is because you need to learn just one user interface or one product, and you can deploy everything on that. No security engineer likes to learn like 10 different products. Okay, any human being won't like that. preferably if all that can be done by a single box. So that is what has driven a lot of people to Palo Alto, because they were kind of the initial, people who brought these now jumped into this. Okay. Now, yesterday we discussed cyber attack life cycle. If you remember that, I told you that any attacker is going to gather information, reconnaissance, then it will basically weaponize a file based on the information that it is gathered. Like I was telling you yesterday, that suppose I find that so and so security engineer of an organization has more interest in cricket, I'll send him a PDF infected file with okay greatest cricket fact, so that he is more likely to open the PDF. So once that is delivered, maybe via email or whatever method you prefer, as an attacker, okay, so you exploit it, you run it on their system, you install backdoors, and then you can exchange command and control traffic and act on your you can exchange command and control traffic to maybe do stuff what you want that thing to do, and you can act on the objective. Now uh, if you look at this here, all these things are actually the steps in C2 means command and control. Okay, all these things are actually cyber attack lifecycle steps, right? And these things are going to protect. These are the features of Palo Alto, which are going to protect individually for different things. Okay, so like I was, this thing will be far more clear later. Okay, because till now you have not seen app id really working. Okay, once you see app id working, you'll understand it. I'll just uh, give you a brief overview about various things. I'll not discuss all these separate things, but look at this after we have gone through these things. Okay, after we have gone through this thing, look at this again, and you will find that yeah, there's a lot of things that uh, these individual components are made to protect. Okay, I'll give you an example. Like, see, um, like app ID. Okay, I was telling you that app ID goes till application layer to identify the actual protocol or actual application that any particular thing is being used for. Okay, now when you do that, what happens is, suppose there is a traffic, okay, like maybe some malware trying to conceal and send its data, and show it as uh, maybe, suppose, let's say HTTP traffic. What it is going to do is, it's going to utilize the port number 80, right, at layer 4. Now since application layer, or since app id will go till the data and try to find out that is this data really HTTP based data. Once it finds out that okay, it's not HTTP based data, actually, it's going to protect and basically block that particular thing from getting delivered. So app ID helps in identifying applications and basically blocking delivery if they are not legitimately what they try to portray that they are, okay, or tell that they are. Similarly, if some command and control traffic is trying to be exchanged using port numbers which are open, since you don't make security rules based on port numbers, you make it based on app ID, it can find any command. It cannot find actually command and control traffic, but it can basically block the command and control traffic because it will not be actually the applications which are allowed. Okay. And similarly, if they try to exfiltrate or have some lateral movement, like lateral movement is like when some malware or infection is trying to uh, go from one subnet to another subnet to exploit as much devices as possible. That will be stopped as well. Okay. So I'll not go into all of them, but like you get the point. Like URL filtering, it's going to block access to malware sites so that you don't open any malware site. Now, even for command and control traffic to move, it might resolve some domains and try to reach some malware domains. Hence, it's going to block that. You will not be able to reach out there. Similarly, like spyware is going to block all the command and control traffic. So all of these components individually, when they work, in combined, they all block these cyber attacks. Give me a second. So, see, all the firewall platforms that are available from Palo Alto, they have their VM series, which are deployed in all these different environments. Almost all the virtualization environments are supported, like ESXi, OpenStack, Hyper-V, NSX, AWS, Azure, Citrix. Okay, so you can have all these virtual machines. Okay, to protect traffic going back and forth between your virtual machines. Now, see, why have virtual machine firewalls become important? Like, suppose if you talk about a Windows machine, which is virtualized in a box. Okay, so this is the physical box, and what I have done is, suppose I have this Windows server virtualized, and I have some other things here, some client machines virtualized. Now, if I want to restrict movement or communication between them, or if I want communication, selective communication to happen between them, since both of them are not physical, if they had would have been physical, we could have utilized the physical firewall to prevent it. But since this is all virtual, you need a virtual machine firewall which will allow traffic to come from one interface, come on one interface, go further selectively. Okay, so there are virtual machine firewalls depending upon your capacity, what you require. Okay, you can choose one of these. Okay, basically, the higher the number, more CPU and RAM it is going to consume, and more number of sessions you are going to get. Okay. Now they start from very basic model PA220. Okay, this is kind of the most entry level model of Palo Alto. Okay, and they have even built a rugged edition for 220. Okay. Rugged edition is for industrial environments because these days a lot of factories have robots which are being controlled by some end user remotely. So a lot of these industries and factories require networking components. Even Cisco has come out with their own industrial equipment range. So this is a rugged edition. The only difference, it's not the components wise, there's no difference. The difference is that this is a rugged edition. This is for environments where there will be a lot of dust. So you see, there's not many ventilation holes. They have, you know, kind of maybe have a different metal and stuff for it. Okay. Because they know this will be in a dirty factory environment. So, you know,
Hello, Sudhanshu. Hello, Sudhanshu, your voice is breaking.
what you can do is you can simply Google compare firewalls Palo Alto. Okay. If you just Google search this, they'll take you to this page. Okay. And here is where you can see all the particular details about the firewall, like what will be a throughput like, okay, how many sessions can I have, how many security policies can I have, okay, zones and lot of things. Okay. Also, they'll pop you up with how can I help you today. Okay. Now, see, feel free to explore this a little bit. Okay. This kind of the highest model, and VM50 Lite and VM50, this is kind of the least, and I won't say least expensive, least throughput models. Okay. Actually, sometimes you'll notice, I'm not really sure, but sometimes these virtual machine firewalls are even more expensive compared to these hardware firewalls, because they know that, you know, VM will be deployed by somebody who is having really a lot of uh, you know, IT infrastructure. So and that's what I found out by looking at one of the quotations. Mhm. So the quotation was for this 200 to 220, it was lesser compared to the VM, you know, something 200 or 300. Okay. 200 or probably. So I'll come back again and again here to show you like various things. Okay. Feel free to explore this. Okay. And if you want, I'll paste this in the chat. Okay. You can easily Google search it. Okay. Okay. Now, also, I'll give you a recommendation here. What Palo Alto thinks about or recommends is that not for, you know, general your job, but for the certification exam. When you'll sit for the certification exam, you'll feel like as if they expect that you should know the basics of all these virtual platforms. Okay. Now, I'm not saying like go through them in depth. Okay. But if you are going to go for the certification exam, okay, then probably spend like 15-20 minutes, understanding each of them, and not necessarily take any training or anything. Just, maybe search on YouTube and try to find out in watching 10-15-20 minutes, maybe half an hour max, to about these individual components. Okay, like if you don't know, suppose suppose there's a guy who doesn't know what Amazon Web Services is actually. Okay, so spend some time gaining knowledge of that. If you don't know what VMware ESXi is, spend like 15-20 minutes to gain knowledge of that. A reason why I'm saying that is, when you start your work, and also if you talk about the certification exam, you will start noticing that people expect that you know to deploy Palo Alto on all the environment, which is actually very unnatural, very weird, because frankly speaking, it's very hard for the network engineer to get hold of all these infrastructure. Like, you might be a knowledgeable person in ESXi, but then maybe you don't have much knowledge about Azure. Okay, so they have tried to have this. That's their expectation. And even when you start your job, you'll see that people expect that, okay, now the guy is Palo Alto certified, he will deploy our Palo Alto everywhere. So until or unless you understand these underlying infrastructure, it becomes hard. Okay, so that's my recommendation. Like, spend at least like 15-20 minutes understanding these basic architectures. Also, if you notice that with time, the line between, there was a time, I tell this people often, like, there was a time when people used to be like, okay, I'm the system admin guy, I maintain the uh, infrastructure for servers and stuff. And then there was this network guy who used to handle all the things related to network. Okay, and then there were, there were these software developers who used to develop some things for the network. Okay, now the thing here is, like, with time these lines are kind of fading away. Okay, and you see even Cisco like bringing all these DevNet certification tracks for network engineers, for them to develop things related to networking. And even, in order to understand those things, sometimes you need this system admin guy level knowledge. So the line is kind of blurring away, and now it's a more uh, you need a lot of diversified knowledge. Okay, like there was a time when you could this operating system of Linux. Okay, but with time, uh, it's becoming a skill expected from network engineers. Okay, I'm not saying like learn all of it. Okay, but for Palo Alto, go through this. Okay, like spend. I would just like, I'm just taking an example, uh, like just suppose I Google search VMware ESXi. Okay, like, watch videos like this, like what is VMware ESXi vCenter, maybe watch something like this. Okay, just casually, don't think of it as like, I'm not endorsing, I have not watched this video. Okay, but what I'm saying is, like, watch maybe YouTube videos, like something like what is VMware ESXi. Okay, what is AWS, what is so that you have basic idea of it. Okay. Now, for the physical platforms, you see that there are firewalls, and like I was telling you yesterday, that Panorama is there, okay, which is a hardware appliance. Also, you can have a virtual machine. The job of Panorama is to manage different firewalls from a single solution, right? From a single user interface. If you want to manage all these different firewalls, you can manage using Panorama. Okay. So Panorama can be, you can get Panorama in M200 hardware appliance. Okay. Or there is M500 as well. And also yesterday I told you that the Wildfire solution, it's also available in a private cloud. You can have a box, a sandboxing environment to detonate files which you expect or which are malicious or not. So you can use WF500, 600, these appliances to set up a private cloud if you are maybe a financial institution hesitating to upload the files to the Palo Alto Wildfire public cloud. Okay. Also, in free time, just why I'm asking you to explore that compare firewalls option. You'll get to know some basic details, because I'm not saying like in interview people expect that, but sometimes if you know like the basic, I'm just giving an example. This is not something that you need to remember in your head, but if you know like between the 520 and 5280, the only difference is session capacity. Okay. And that's because there is more RAM. So these kind of knowledge will come to you if you explore this compare firewalls option, which I was showing you. Okay? Now, also one very good thing here is that the operating system is consistent across all these platforms. Okay. So it's not like if I open this is a VM100 solution. Okay. This is a licensed firewall. Okay. So if I open VM100, it's not like uh, the UI is different in 7000. Even if you open 7000 series, the user interface is going to look similar. Okay. These are all the different virtual machine platforms. Okay. And now, see here, generally when you talk about a firewall, there is talk of throughput. Okay. Like how much data can any firewall process. Okay. You'll notice when you go to compare firewalls option here, there is two throughputs written here. Okay. One is firewall throughput, another is threat prevention throughput. Okay. I'll show you. Okay. Now see, there is two throughputs here, right? App ID firewall throughput, and there is threat prevention throughput. What's the difference? App ID throughput is the performance throughput that you get if you don't enable content ID options. Means for this, suppose I take this firewall and I don't enable antivirus, file blocking, URL filtering, those kind of things, then the throughput, max throughput you can achieve is 700 Gbps. Okay, but if you can, or if you enable antivirus, anti-malware, spyware, and these kind of things, then the max throughput almost degrades to half, right? So see, this means threat prevention throughput means the throughput that you are going to get when you have enabled all the defensive options. Okay, and this is when you have not enabled all the threat prevention options, actually just enabled app ID and rest of it just like traditional firewall. Okay, so preferably while selecting a firewall, look for the threat prevention throughput. Don't look for the app ID firewall throughput. Okay, and mostly it's half, but in some cases it might be even lesser than half. Okay, so problem is if you consider firewall throughput, you know, suppose I go ahead and buy this whatever VM50. Okay, and then down the lane I realize that uh, I required two lease lines of each 100 Mbps to be terminated, but when I'm enabling threat prevention, my throughput is getting reduced. So consider that. You can kind of ignore this. Okay, always ideal people ignore this. Always look at just threat prevention throughput. Okay, so how to choose? Evaluate based on throughput or how many sessions, simultaneous sessions are going to happen. Okay, threat prevention throughput, what's the definition? It is the expected throughput with all defensive options enabled. So you should consider, that's why I said consider this. And firewall throughput is throughput with no content ID defense options enabled. See, basically you have bought Palo Alto for enabling antivirus, anti-malware, and all these file blocking, URL filtering stuff, right? So that's why I'm saying like consider this rather than the firewall throughput. Okay. Now there is a concept of virtual systems. Okay, and Cisco background से कौन है? Who all are from Cisco background, like who have gone through ASA? Pankaj, I know. Anybody else? Okay. Kiran, you?
No, sir. I know, have little bit knowledge of checkpoint.
Okay. So see, what is virtual system? Okay, Pankaj,
Sir,
context equal to virtual system. Okay, like what you do is, like suppose I go for context is the word we use for ASA, right? Like if you want to get one firewall and you want to carve out multiple virtual firewalls out of it, what you do is you make virtual systems. Okay, so it's that. So suppose you have one physical firewall, but you want to make multiple virtual system out of it. Okay, all those virtual system will basically be separate logical firewalls within a single physical firewall. Okay, so often a time service providers do it. Okay, like when you go for the lease line connection, they'll bundle you a firewall along with it, they'll say, okay, we can give you a firewall along with the lease line connection, and this will be the charges, because you are going for lease line now, you'll start getting attacks and things will start getting messy. So go for this. So what they do is like large service providers many times go for big firewalls like this 7000 series. And if you see like this 7000 series firewall, okay, in the virtual system, yeah, see, the base virtual system is 25. Like suppose I just buy this firewall, okay, and no additional licenses for increasing virtual system, then I can make 25 firewalls out of this. But if I give them more money, if I give Palo Alto enough money, I can have 225 virtual systems into this. Okay, so they go ahead, like service providers go ahead for this kind of firewall, and then have each of their customer having a separate virtual system. Okay, now it's not, virtual system is not zone. Zone is a different thing. Okay, we'll talk about zone, uh, what it is, and how we make
Sir,
rules based on zone.
so these virtual systems like context is similar as ASA we have, right?
हाँ हाँ, वही तो कह रहा हूँ मैं. Like
Okay.
just like we have context in ASA, in context,
Yeah.
what do you make multiple logical ASAs, right?
Yeah.
So see, this is not if this is your first firewall to learn, I'll tell you, this is not a revolutionary feature. I have seen sometimes, people who are trying to learn this firewalls related stuff for the first time, they feel like, okay, this is a revolutionary feature. No other vendor has it. Almost all other vendors have uh, a rebranded or renamed version of this thing. Okay, like Cisco says context, and I'm not remembering the name for checkpoint, but there is some name for checkpoint. I think for Fortinet they call it VDOM. But my point here is like, uh, every vendor almost has this kind of functionality. Okay, so it creates an administrative boundary. Like suppose you give access of somebody of a virtual system, they cannot make changes to the physical firewall pin or this other virtual system. Okay, now depending upon the model, like 3000, 4000, 5000 series, they support multiple virtual systems. Okay, and these support virtual system only if appropriate license is installed. Okay, so like you saw on 7000, there was a base virtual systems, right? 25. Okay, but in these low end firewalls, like if you want, suppose let's look at 820. Okay, like this 820, 850, these don't have any virtual system support. Like this is generally for a single firewall solution. Like if you look at 820, the base virtual system is what, 1, and max is not applicable. That means you cannot carve out multiple logical firewalls out of a 820 or 850. Okay, fine. Now I'm checking 850, so it also has 1. Also, the virtual machine firewalls don't support this. Okay, you can kind of now ignore 2000 series because most of them are now removed from the corporate networks. You can consider 3000 series. Okay, like if you look at this 3220, the base virtual system is 1. Okay, but if you buy appropriate licenses, you can have up to 6 virtual systems. Okay, fine. Obviously, these 220, 220R, or even any virtual machine platform, even if you go for 700 or 1000 whatsoever, these don't have any virtual system capability. Okay, so that's why I'm saying, like, in free time, just explore this a little bit, so that sometimes just to judge your knowledge, not for the certification exam, but for interview point of view. Sometimes people can ask you whether you have really studied it properly or not. To ask you, like, okay, I have a 800 series firewall, 850, 820. Will it have the capability of virtual system? Just to check your general knowledge. Also, if you don't remember at the top of your head, you can say, I'll open the firewall comparison page and check it from there easily. But, uh, preferably if you remember some basic things, it's good. 200 series or 500 actually has been replaced now with 800. Okay. So when I made these slides, the 500 series firewall was there. So 200, 800, 220 actually. Okay. 220 or 800 series do not support. Like I explained to you already, rather than using multiple firewalls, service providers and enterprises can use a single pair of firewalls and enable virtual systems on them. Pair, because most of them want to have redundancy. Okay, so they'll buy 2 firewalls and configure high availability between them. HA. Now, when you create VSys, you can assign a set of physical interfaces and logical interfaces and sub interfaces to it. Okay. Physical will be like Ethernet 1/1, 1/2, those things, and logical will be like interface, loopback, and there is VLAN interface, there is tunnel interfaces. You can assign all of these different things. You can also make sub interfaces just like you make those in Cisco. Like I want Ethernet 1/1 dot something, you can have that. Okay. Also, you can have security zone. We'll discuss what zone is. Okay. Basically, it's just a way to define security policy. Like you can define, like, okay, I have a trust zone, I have an untrust zone. I'll allow traffic from trust to untrust. I'll block traffic from untrust to trust, or whatever security policy you want. Okay. I'm not going into details of zones right now. Also, you can have virtual router. What is virtual router? In Cisco, we call it VRF. Means what you can do is, if you are not familiar, instead of one router having one single routing table, we can make multiple logical routers out of it by basically dividing the routing table into separate things, separate, VRF. Okay. This is again used by service providers a lot. Okay, VRF to segregate, maybe, so that this routing table doesn't get messed up with this or mixed up with this, so they can keep them separate. Okay. VRF is called virtual router here. Okay. Fine. Now, VSys, you can deploy it in combination of virtual wire layer 2 or layer 3. We'll discuss what vWire layer 2, layer 3 is. it will be clear at that time. Probably today, if not tomorrow. Okay. Now, use case. You can use virtual system to segment administrative access, like I was telling you. You can also use it to segment management of all policies, like because this VCS will have a different security, NAT, QS, app ID, or authentication and DOS protection policy compared to this VCS. So you can use it to segment that. Also, if you create an object, what is an object? I'll tell you. See, suppose I want to make a rule for 10.0.0.1. Okay, that if the traffic is sourced from this destination 100.0.0.1. One way is I reference this exact IP address in the security rule. Okay. Another way is I can make an object saying 10.0.0.1 is PCA, 100.0.0.1 is an extra 0 here. Is whatever PCX. Now, instead of making rules based on these individual IP address, now you could reference these address objects. Like you could say source PCA, destination PCX. I want to allow or not allow. So basically, since you will, if you want to again and again reference this IP address, if you keep on typing the IP address, there might be a mistake. Okay, but if you keep on referencing this object, it becomes easy. So this is again also nothing new. Almost I think all of the firewalls support creation of objects. So objects created in one VCS will not be available in another VCS. Okay, and there are many different types of objects. We'll look at all these objects because you see, if you go here, object is not that small a thing. If you see, there's many different objects. So we'll look at all the objects. I'm just giving you a brief. Also, if you integrate it to user ID, you can integrate them separately, like whatever users this firewall VCS knows. It's not necessary that this will know. Also, sometimes we need to have certificates, okay, for various things like decryption. And then the certificates, SSL certificates available in VCS A will not be available in VCS B. Okay. Also, logs reporting, all the logs generated for VCS A and VCS B will be separate. So this gives you a high level overview, like what things get segmented once you create virtual system. Okay. So for administration, simple, you have Panorama for administration of firewall. Another is using a web UI, like I'm doing the firewall management here by directly opening the web UI. Okay, and then you can SSH to the firewall, or you can have the CLI access using console as well, or you can use REST API. Okay, REST API is used for automation related stuff. Sometimes if you want to push a script or pull information for your automation, for maybe some JSON stuff, or in different formats are supported. You can use REST XML API. Okay, I'll not touch that here because that is what will take the course towards automation and DevNet related stuff for Palo Alto. Okay, but REST XML API is supported. Okay. Now, when you access Palo Alto initially, obviously, you can see there is a console, just like your router or any other firewall has. Also, you'll notice that there's an MGT interface. Okay, it's not necessary to uh, utilize this console. You can altogether skip even when you are bringing the firewall out of the box. Suppose we get a new firewall and I don't want to use the console, I can avoid using that. How? Basically, on this management interface, uh, there is an IP address on a physical firewall. You can use this dedicated out of band management interface. It will have an IP address of 192.168.1.1. So suppose I just use a cable to connect it to my PC, okay, on the network card, I'm saying, okay. And if I give a IP of the same range, 192.168, suppose 1.100 or whatever, from the same subnet, obviously, then I can open the web browser and directly open like https://192.168.0.1 sorry 1.1, and it's going to open. So it's not necessary to have a console and manage the firewall from there. Okay, you can either do it using the management interface or using the console connection. Okay, this is for the physical firewalls. Okay, for a virtual machine firewall, this management interface acts as a DHCP client. So suppose I plug in, okay, what's going to happen is it's going to send a DHCP discovery message asking for an IP address if it was a virtual machine firewall, not a physical, okay? And most of the virtual machine environments have a DHCP server somewhere, okay? So if the virtual machine does a DHCP discover message, it's going to get an IP address, which you can see, like even for my firewall, if you see here, it's a virtualized firewall, okay, and it shows here, DHCP IP 192.168.0.22, okay. So that's when I basically opened 192.168.0.22 HTTPS. If you know the IP it got from DHCP, which you will know because you'll have the your control, so you'll be able to look at the console of the VM. Okay. By default, login credentials for the firewall is admin. Okay, username admin, password admin. So, like I was telling you, we have tried to include screenshots of things so that you don't have to, note everything down. Okay, like DHCP IP, you can try to ping or open HTTPS next to manage firewall. Okay. So now actually I want some things to be set up, and it's going to take some time. I was not expecting that we'll start with lab today. Okay, so we'll start with lab tomorrow. Okay, I'll show you the basic configuration. We'll start tomorrow, like setting beginning things like host name and stuff, and then we'll move slowly to advanced stuff. Okay, if you have any question till now, you can let me know.
Sudhanshu, hi. Hello. I am having questions related to deployment of firewall. Hello. I'm not able to
I can hear you.
Yeah. So like I'm not. I'm having question related to deployment. So like, can we have some practical labs? We can do actual what is the deployment of firewalls in troubleshooting?
Like what kind of question you have in mind?
Like how deployment actually works. If I'm having an new organization and I want to set up firewall Palo Alto organization or network, so how it will be done? Like you have shown us the different way. So like basically in I have seen in multiple environments I have worked. They don't entertain such things like do deployment, but they share we do only basic stuff. So like can we have some practical sessions where we can see the actual deployment?
See, it's something like this. I'll tell you. Uh, if you talk about deployment now, deployment is a process, complete process. Like you don't do everything yourself. Like I'm just giving an example. Okay, like if you are talking about, suppose, I'm excluding the process before this. Suppose I get a box. Okay, I'll unbox, I'll bring the firewall, I'll rack mount it. This is something which will be done by somebody junior, generally, generally network engineers uh, who are experienced. Okay, and this is not something that we do daily, right? Do you get my point? Like, deployment, you won't do daily deployment. That's
Yes.
why you find it rare. I'm
Yeah.
just clarifying. Okay,
Yes.
like you won't every day unscrew this, get it out of the rack, and then put it back in the rack, right? Typically, if you talk about any deployment, okay, there is two types of work. Okay, there is active networking and there is passive networking. Okay, passive work is related to, like, I want to do cabling. Okay, rack mounting device, this kind of stuff. Typically, even anybody who knows how to use a screwdriver can rack mount, right? Do you get my point?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what's your expectation like from deployment? Like, see, if you talk about the active networking part, okay, once the device is rack mounted, active networking is related to configuring that device, all the configuration, like whether management configuration, or whether routing configuration, or security policies configuration, and all that.
So like
And if you
even
talk about the process before this, even like you send a request, like, or you send a query to your vendors asking for a particular model. If you know the model, if you don't know the model, you can just send a vague request, I need a firewall. They'll recommend you, but there is, like, this is something which you cannot you know learn in a class, actually.
okay, not like this, but I even had a question like when the OS gets upgraded, like you
Mhm.
said, like some of the devices got end of the life, like
Yeah.
after some 6 months or every year there will be upgradation into OS. So like
Mhm.
how to make the changes in it? Like, even I have seen that in market there is a RS like a Palo Alto PA 9.1,
Mhm.
and in the company they will be using the previous one, not the very previous one, but at
Mhm.
some point of time they will be upgrading it. So can we
Yeah.
get to learn like how to upgrade that OS?
Yeah, I'll tell you frankly, upgrade process in Palo Alto is very simple.
Okay.
Okay. I can just show you the main steps right away. Like, if you go to device, okay, I'm just saying, I'm not, I'll repeat this, okay. If you go to device, under the device tab, you have this so, software, okay. If you click on this, And this works only in a licensed firewall, not in an unlicensed firewall. If you click on the software and if you click check now here, okay, it's going to check on Palo Alto servers whether there is a newer version of things available or not. Like if you see 9.1.0 is currently which is installed, 9.1.0 S3. Okay, so you see, very easy. If I click on download, it will download. If I click on install, it will install that. After the installation is done, I'll reboot the firewall in downtime, of course, and done. So you see, the process is not that difficult, especially considering this, Palo Alto. In Cisco and many other vendors, it's very complicated.
Yeah,
Like
even in
you,
Checkpoint also.
yeah. I'll just, you download, you can see up here in the tasks, it will show you a status bar whether the thing is getting downloaded. I'll just show you, like, it's just simple. And you want to delete, you can delete it from here. Like I'll show you. You want to download, I'll click on download. Obviously, the firewall should have appropriate access to internet to download this. Okay. Or
Okay.
so it starts downloading, done. And if you don't like this way, you can download the machine, the image on your PC. You can upload it from here. Upload the software package. Okay, so the download of software has been begun. Okay, now I'll close it. I can open it from the task again if I want to see the status of it.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, I'll discuss that tomorrow. Okay, uh, like I'll discuss. This is not the firewall that I'll work on mostly. I'll work mostly on the unlicensed one because I want you to get the feel that okay, you can do a lot of practicals without even licenses. Okay, there are some like see, there are some practicals which you cannot do without license, like this. Okay, but tell me how hard was this, right? It was easy. Okay,
No, actually, we don't
so
have
we'll discuss that
any
tomorrow.
idea regarding this, so I had a doubt. Just
No
wanted to
problem.
clear that.
Whatever doubts you have, just keep on asking. Okay, I'll tell
Okay.
you, mostly you guys attend the class on mute. Right, you don't say much. Okay, but
Sudhanshu, your voice is breaking. Okay, there is echo.
hello,
Hello.
yeah, I'm
There is an
saying
echo.
hello.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm saying mostly you guys attend the session on mute. So whatever doubts you have, if you keep on asking them parallelly, uh, it will be more interactive session.
If
Okay.
it is okay for you, then we can ask the question. Like it doesn't look so good interrupting between. So like
No problem to me. Actually, like I'm not that person who says like, don't interrupt me right now. We'll discuss doubts later and like, see, you can ask me a doubt. If I know that we are going to touch that topic tomorrow, I'll let you know that. If I can touch on the topic today, whenever you feel like having a doubt, ask it at that moment. Okay, that will
okay.
keep this session more lively. Or else it's just like I'm telling you the story for 1.5 or 2 hours and then bye bye.
Okay, okay, okay. Not an issue. So like you can ask question. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. See you guys tomorrow. I'll end the meeting then.
Thanks.